Part 0020. No, it's different for you, Ludi. You're forgetting your title here. I mean, you're a beautiful elf and an imperial princess. Compared to a nobody like me, the sky's the limit on how much value he'd get from using you. Wait, what am I saying? That's not even the point here. Yuka loudly smacked the desk. Do you really think the Takioto you know would do something like that? Well, Iori hesitated to continue. Yuka then pressed in closer to Iori. Big bro, I can pick up on what you're thinking clear as day, okay? So hurry up and tell us who put this idea in your head. Iori looked at me when Yuka said this. All I could do was shake my head. What was I supposed to do here? Sorry, I would be behind that. Just then, another girl showed up and butted into the conversation. Vice President Fran? She nodded at Yuka's quiet question and adjusted her glasses as she lowered her head in remorse. I know testing you like this was a bit rude, but to be perfectly honest, we never once distrusted Takioto. Yuka hemmed, looking at the vice president dubiously. Oh, so that's what it was. Makes total sense. Despite what Yuka had just said, her eyes were still filled with reproach. Faced with Yuka's overt irritation, which she clearly could have hidden if she wanted to, the vice president forced a smile. However, we were all in agreement that we needed to corroborate things, which was why we asked you. I still think Kusuk knows something and is getting up to something, though. Yeah, he does love doing things on his own. Yuka followed suit with Ludi's observation. Iori agreed, explaining that the three of us all shared their view. Do you really think there's a seal on Raziel? There is certainly something going on with Raziel. The academy must be related as well, I think. And I doubt we have much time before the seal comes undone, Ludi replied. Yuka nodded with her. The way Kusuk's been acting lately all starts to make sense if that's true. As she said this, Ludi glanced over to look at the vice president. If Nanami and Kusuk are going to dodge our questions, why don't we hold off on that for now? There's another way to get important information without asking either of them. We have someone to go to instead. Yuka and I should be able to ask her right away. We can ask Principal Marino Hanamura herself. After Vice President Fran was called away by that ceremonial committee woman and left, we immediately made for the principal's office. We thought it would take time to get an appointment with her, but it turned out she could see us immediately, and she readily showed us into her office. Ch. These snacks are so tasty. Sitting down on the sofa in the principal's office without a moment's hesitation, Yuka stuffed her cheeks with snacks, sparkles in her eyes. Treats aside, we were dealing with Marino Hanamura here. She was the top authority in the school, as well as a powerful figure in the magic world, and a member of the Hanamura group. Yuka. Iori admonished Yuka under his breath since we were dealing with an authority figure. I guess he didn't know the principal didn't expect that level of politeness. Oh please, Iori, you don't need to worry about any of that. Go ahead, help yourself, too. The principal looked at Yuka and Iori with a bright smile. Now then, what brings you to my office? Iori seemed a bit concerned about Yuka's complete lack of reservation but began speaking anyway. Principal Hanamura. Do you know of the Book of Raziel? She answered with a giggle. Oh wow, Ko also asked me a similar question. Her expression completely unchanged. Then she reached for her cup of tea. Now, how should I answer that? I suppose it'd be correct to say I know about it, but I don't know about it. What does that mean? I know it exists. And I know where to find it, too. You do? Iori asked with surprise. The principal nodded with a smile. But since you've investigated this far, I'm assuming you must already have some leads on where it could be located. Well, Iori hesitated. Without ever losing her smile, the principal nodded. Sorry, that was a bit of an odd way to put it, wasn't it? See, the truth is, I wasn't too knowledgeable on the book until recently. What do you mean? Marino nodded at Ludi's question. I only know what I do now because of Ko. In fact, he stopped by just recently to talk about the same thing, down to the tome's precise location, too. Gah. Ugh, I knew it. Yuka heaved a huge sigh. Conversely, Iori mumbled begrudgingly. Kusuk had known something after all. Can you tell me what exactly you're aware of? Then I'll tell you what I understand on my end, the principal asked. According to our research, the Book of Raziel does actually exist, and we know that it's been sealed away somewhere in this region. Ding, ding, ding. What else? Also, that it's possible the Archangel Raziel fell from heaven. Oh my. Marino continued smiling while she chimed in with her acknowledgments. There wasn't any surprise on her face, but her eyes were filled with anticipation as she stared at Iori. That's it? I figured you might have some additional information with your knowledge of the Academy, Principal Hanamura. That's all. Really? I guess so. Marino hummed as she nodded. Then a look of surprise finally crossed her face. Marino? When I wondered aloud about where she was going with this, she changed the subject. Oh, it's nothing. So you want to know where the Book of Raziel is? Or if the Archangel Raziel really is a fallen angel, I'm guessing. That's right. Iori nodded. All of this is only what Ko told me, though. If that's fine with you. Marino suddenly tilted her head. Actually, Ko never told me not to mention it to anyone else, so what's the harm? Sure, I can tell you all about it. Her words brought a strained smile to Ludi's face. Maybe she was reminded of something that had happened before. Let's see. Before I talk about Raziel, there's something I want to predicate this all on, okay? The Academy scale is in a class of its own compared to any other academic institution in the world, even next to Amaterasu Academy or Susanoo Martial Arts Academy. I take it you feel the same way, Yuka? At the question, Yuka's serious expression turned sour. After seeming to recall her time at Susanoo Martial Arts Academy, she nodded. I totally thought the same thing. I mean, first of all, the campus site itself is just way too darn big. How the heck am I supposed to remember how to get around? I mean, is this place a dungeon or something? Tee-hee-hee-hee-hee. Marino audibly chuckled. A dungeon? I suppose it's more spacious than the floor of a small dungeon, isn't it? When I first heard we move around with spatial magic circles, I was like, are you kidding me? Now I can see why. Right. That's exactly why. I can't possibly have a perfect grasp of the entire academy. Of course, I'm sure I know more about this academy than anyone else, though. That was only natural. The higher and higher you went up the ladder, the harder it was to understand and administer everything all by yourself. At a certain point, you had to start delegating things to other people. The same must have been true for Ludi's family, the Truffles. Her father wasn't aware of absolutely everything going on throughout the Empire's domains. Instead, he placed administrators in each region and entrusted them with the details. The same principle applied even on a smaller scale, like back at my home. The yard was maintained by a gardener who had been selected by a trusted butler. It was those two, not father, who managed every last nook and cranny of the estate's greenery. Ko said it was the library. The library. Iori widened his eyes before letting out a sigh. Yep, the library. Did you expect as much? Assuming that the Book of Raziel was at the academy, the library was one of the potential spots. Kata said that a forest would be the best place to hide a tree. He looked in my direction. Sorry, I was sorta just saying that. I figured, Iori mumbled after hearing my reply. The next instant, he got a message and pulled out his Tsukuyomi traveler. Then his face went pale, and he turned toward me. He showed us the screen, having finished deciphering it. I need you here immediately. That was all it said. I'm sorry to do this in the middle of our conversation, Principal Hanamura. Oh no, don't worry about it. I've basically said everything I have to say anyway. You can ask Ko to tell you the rest, right? The principal replied. We thanked her and stood up to take our leave when she addressed Ludi. Oh, right, that reminds me. I have something to talk to you about, Ludi. Hearing this, Iori, Yuka, and I all gave our thanks again before exiting the office. Something felt off, didn't it? Yuka was the first to speak after leaving the principal's office. She hemmed and hawed while crossing her arms. She's definitely hiding something. That's for sure. HRMMM. I was surprised. I didn't think anyone else would have thought the same. Hearing this, Iori cocked his head. I agree that she's keeping quiet about something, but it has to be something she can't tell us, given she's the principal, right? Seriously? This is why you are who you are, big bro. You're definitely big bro, and honestly, that's really what makes you you, big bro. I guess big bro will be big bro after all. I have no idea what any of that means, but I'm pretty sure you're making fun of me. Sounded a bit complimentary at the end, right? I said. It was just a hunch, though. The real question was just how many different meanings did the words big bro have for Yuka anyway? For someone who's skilled at taking the initiative in a conversation, it's really easy to steer the topic in the direction they want. Anyway, I'm going to send a message to Ludi, okay? Yuka said, fiddling with her Tsukuyami traveler. Also, this isn't necessarily related, but you're hiding something, aren't you, big bro? Iori nervously scratched his cheek in response to her question and averted his eyes. I'm not really hiding anything exactly. Spill it, Yuka replied to her nervously fidgeting brother. That was enough to get him to give in. He began talking about what he'd been keeping quiet. When Marino brought up the library, a thought popped into my head. About what? I've always been a bit uncertain about Ms. Sakura. The librarian? Iori nodded. She's really looked out for me, even before you transferred to this school, Yuka, but... Yeah, but... She's sure to say some mysterious things sometimes. What do you mean? So back when I registered to use the library, I really didn't have any plans on checking out any books to begin with. Really? Then why did you sign up in the first place? Well, here's the thing. Ms. Sakura told me that I would be using the place really soon. Iori closed his eyes and pointed his head toward the sky, as though recalling that moment. At the time, I thought she meant we'd be using the library in class. But I misunderstood her. You did? I have definitely used the library a bunch of times. That's true. But not for class. I go there to borrow books to help with clearing dungeons. None of what I've checked out has been related to my studies. Yuka went quiet, thinking through something. And then, has Ms. Sakura worked here for a long time? She asked her first question. Now I could see why Iori always said his sister was amazing. Her cognitive abilities were really impressive. Yeah, that's right. I heard Ms. Ruija say that Ms. Sakura helped her out when she was a student here. It wouldn't have been unusual for Ms. Sakura to tell Iori to register with the library if he needed it for class. But Iori had only ever used the library for help with things outside his coursework. It didn't make sense for Ms. Sakura to tell Iori that he would be using the library when he wouldn't have to visit for class. Yuka had deduced all that from Iori's anecdote. She murmured while mulling over something again. Yuka? Iori asked when she didn't say anything for a while. So basically, what you're trying to say here is that Ms. Sakura predicted the future? Hearing this, Iori smiled with a wince. I don't have to say much for you to put everything together, huh? I think that's amazing, you know. Yep, thanks. Well, yeah. Apparently, Ludivine didn't get pressed to register herself. Even though she's way more bookish looking than I am. Actually, I'm the only one Ms. Sakura asked to register. I see. And that's what made you start questioning things, right? Yuka was thinking something through. It's suspicious, right? And on top of that, she introduced me to one of the dungeons where we found documents concerning the Book of Raziel. Well, there's probably something going on there, but it should be fine, right? Why do you think that? I mean, Takioto's already doing something about it, Yuka replied, unconcerned. I could admit that he engendered a weird feeling of trust, and he actually had the skills to back up the crazy game he talked. However, I sensed that Yuka placed a different, indescribable type of trust in him. Iori forced a smile and murmured, fair enough. But once we heard what Anemone had to say, none of us were able to smile anymore. When we showed up to where we'd been called, a slight gloom hung in the air. Though only the class rep and Vice President Fran were really in low spirits, Anemone was the same as always. Here's what I got after collecting all the information out there on Raziel, said Anemone, bringing up a display of a summary based on her translations and the other documents we had collected up until now. The Archangel Raziel used the Book of Raziel to attempt world domination. Defeating Raziel was difficult, and she was sealed away. The seal on her slowly weakened over time and would eventually disappear entirely. The angel's form was shown in the attached materials. According to our research, Raziel does actually exist, and it's clear that she did go on a rampage at some point. Though there's nothing written on where exactly it happened. That being said, we might have an answer to that question soon enough. What do you mean? Iori asked. I mentioned in my summary that there's an image of the angel in the additional documents, didn't I? Take a look, and it'll click. Iori, I need you to brace yourself for this, okay? The vice president said this before nodding at Anemone. When she did, a picture appeared on the screen. What? Are you serious? We looked at the image and were completely bewildered. Iori seemed to take it the worst, whether because he was unable to fully digest the truth or because his brain was outright rejecting it. He trembled as he stared at the image. Then, keeping his eyes locked on the screen, he took a few steps forward. It can't be. Another step. No, it's not true. Another step. Why, Ms. Sakura? There on the screen was a picture of the librarian, Ru Sakura. Orange's face went pale as he stared in astonishment. He was so shocked that he'd completely dropped his class clown persona. Class rep averted her eyes. She'd arrived ahead of us, so she must have already known the truth. Vice President Fran sighed and pushed up her glasses. I'll share this information with the president and the others. Then she immediately took out her Tsukuyami Traveler and began typing. This is certainly unexpected, remarked Anemone. I didn't have any real connection to her, but I would have never expected a person. Pardon me, carefully scrutinizing all the information we've gathered, I can say she's an angel. Anyway, I never thought she would ever be the type to do something like that. Everyone shared the same sentiment. For the time being, I've contacted President Monica, the 3 committee members, and the principal. I've also secured a meeting room. After this, the plan is to talk things over before taking action. I have a question. I could take a guess what Iori had questions about. Do you? And what might that be? Iori then replied to Anemone's inquiry. The place we found these documents. Ms. Sakura indirectly introduced it to us. I can't fully believe this. We should go run this by her, Iori said, making to run off. Orange began to chase after him before Vice President Fran stopped them both. Watching all this, Anemone heaved a sigh. Now, hold on there, my hasty Iori and Orange. What you boys need is presence of mind and calm thoughts. For now, you should calm yourselves down by watching videos adults used to cheer themselves up. Is there anyone in the school who calls me by my name? Orange's complaint quietly escaped his lips. I couldn't tell if Anemone had heard it. She pointed to another room. I've prepared some coffee, chairs, and monitors over there. Please, rest assured that they're all videos I've personally selected, featuring au naturel subjects aplenty. Go ahead and relax. At Anemone's beckoning, the pair, along with a conflicted-looking class rep, went into the other room. Wait, this is just a cute animal video. It wasn't long before we could hear Orange's voice reach out. He must have been expecting a different type of au naturel video. Still, though, an angel. The timing of this commission of his, and the amount, too. It's all a bit too convenient. Don't you find it suspicious, Fran? Yes, I do. I mean, it's so perfectly on the nose. I didn't know what they were talking about. However, Ludi seemed to understand what their conversation was referencing. You're talking about that item Kasuk commissioned you to make, right? The vice president nodded meekly. It's always like this with Kasuk. Hearing this, Anemone placed her hand up to her chin, looking deep in thought. Really now? Then it's possible he's the one pulling the strings behind all this, yes? I can't deny that. But, even if Kasuk is the one behind all this, I'm still going to stay at his side. Ludi said this in her usual frank tone of voice as if it were perfectly natural, like applying skin lotion after getting out of the bath. When Ludi said this, Vice President Fran's jaw half dropped, while Anemone burst into a fit of laughter. I was convinced. I mean, I'll admit he's not a bad guy. Annoying as hell, though. When I voiced my agreement, Anemone nodded, savoring every minute. Even if he's the one behind all this, you'll still side with him, you say? Hee ha 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 ha. Why, depending on the situation, that's basically a declaration of war. This is certainly a surprise. I never would have expected you to give such an interesting answer, Princess Ludivine. Hilarity aside, why, though? I don't think for a moment that Kasuk would lead all this in a bad direction. Though I regret to inform you that, Based on my experiences, I'm certain he's planning something here. I see, I see. Intriguing, very intriguing. What about you, Katerina? Do you share the same reason as Ludivine? I guess that's part of it. Except, the bigger thing is my guts just telling me that he's not doing anything like that. It was an uncertain call, totally different from Ludi's. But when it came down to it, my gut was what I trusted most. That was especially true in scenarios like these. Most times, people didn't really understand why I made decisions like these, and they would sometimes even laugh at me for it, but my intuition had never steered me wrong in important moments. Anemone laughed. Your gut? I can appreciate an answer like that. Though you can hardly call that perfectly reliable, can you? Magistrate Anemone? We should get going. Vice President Fran chimed in, prompting Anemone to shake her head with resignation. Sorry. I do apologize if I have offended you. If Kusuk truly was pulling strings from the shadows, he wouldn't have had me make him those items the first place, after all. Though, that in itself is suspicious, isn't it? Magistrate. No. Oh, someone's getting testy. Joining the ceremonial committee was the right call. Cheyenne doesn't nag me at all, you see. Not that she still isn't noisy herself, mind you. Ha ha ha. All I knew about Cheyenne was her choice in outfits and her high-handed tone, but I could agree that she looked like she'd be a bit annoying. I considered the possibility that Takioto messed up somehow and undid Raziel's seal himself and is now working to atone for it, but judging by the ancient texts, that'd be pretty much impossible. Then the question is, what is he doing? Do you not wish to find out what that is, Princess Ludivine? Of course I do. I'm sure Kusuk will talk to me if he needs me. If not, he won't. Though, he did tell me before in a roundabout way that he would need my assistance, and I believe this might have been what he was talking about. Just need to ask him then. Kusuk Takioto. Anemone seemed to chew on his name as she spoke. When it comes to Kusuk Takioto, I only have others' evaluations of him to go by. We've met a few times at most, she said before sipping her tea. That said, I have a general idea of the boy. He claimed to have cleared some dungeons solo, so I thought he must be quite capable himself. But now I see that his greatest strength is his friends, not his personal ability. Anemone looked from Ludi to Yuka, and then her gaze fell on me. I was about to chime in and insist that Kusuk would have gotten this far whether we were there or not. At that moment, however, we heard Orange shout, "Hey, Iori! Where are you going?" Right as all our eyes turned in the direction of the voice, Iori burst out from the other room. I ran after him, clicking my tongue. Iori's figure had grown small in the distance. Ugh, that idiot. What the heck does he think he's doing? The words slipped from my mouth. Then I turned to glare at Orange, who was supposed to have been right beside him. Sorry, once he saw a cat, I couldn't stop him. I understood that it wasn't Orange's fault. I know you're not to blame here. Come on. We have to hurry. When we finally got to the library, Iori was already pressing Sakura. Tell it to me straight. He slammed the desk. However, Sakura just sat there wearing her usual smile. Miss Sakura, you're Raziel. An angel planning to use the magical book of Raziel you created to conquer the world. Is that true? Hee, what do you think? Sakura playfully muttered. Rejecting her non-reply, Iori once again slammed the desk. Don't play dumb. I didn't come here to joke around, Iori said. Sakura slowly rose to her feet, still smiling. Let me tell you something, Iori. People? They're the most selfish and egotistical things in the world. Sakura demurely closed her eyes, and the color of her hair slowly began to change. That wasn't all. The presence she gave off, her very being itself, changed as well. Whoa, hang on, Miss Sakura, Orange mumbled as he watched her change, his lips twitching nervously. They act solely out of self-interest and greed, cause problems to everyone but themselves, ravage the earth if it serves them, and ultimately start wars with their fellow humans. She began to walk. The moment she picked up a returned library book, she turned into particles of light and dispersed. At first, it irritated me to no end. But then, at some point, a revolution took hold of me. I had a thought, what if I controlled it all? Suddenly, I heard her voice right beside me, so I took out my dagger and backed away. When had she circled around next to me? She had been across the room just a moment ago. Could there be any sight more amusing than people dancing in the palm of my hand? But I don't need so many of them. A single town should suffice. Sakura placed the book in her hands back on the shelf without any concern. Then she vanished again, reappearing near Ludi this time. She returned another book to the shelf. You truly think that then? Ludi murmured, looking like she couldn't believe her ears. Yes, it's been on my mind these past 100 years. Once Sakura finished returning all the books she had to the shelves, she again disappeared, this time going deeper into the library, out in front of all of us. Ms. Sakura. Iori shook his head and mumbled in pure disbelief. But her words weren't the only thing that was unbelievable, her appearance was, too. Black wings. They were not the pure white seen in fairy tales. They almost looked like they belonged to a demon. Hello, everyone. I am the angel of knowledge, Raziel. More importantly, why are your heads not bowed when I am showing you my true form? It can't be, Iori mumbled. This can't be. I don't believe it. You always supported me, class rep, and the other students with whatever we tried to do. You always were nice enough to give us a place to study. You always made coffee for us. Sakura stared hard at Iori, not moving a muscle. Whenever I was in trouble, you'd always be there too. Enough. Huh. MS. Sakura this, MS. Sakura that. It's all so grating. Her voice was cold and dispassionate. Faced with reality, Iori gritted his teeth without saying a word. He made a slightly remorseful expression. Once I began thinking humans would inevitably face destruction, everything in the world seemed so amusing. Especially the young boy who talked to me about his silly dreams. Think about it, the world would end before they could ever come true. She lifted her hand, and several crosses of light appeared around her. But I don't hate you, you know. Why? The more you look to the future, the funnier it becomes. If you'd like, I could even invite you to join my new world. Why? You could be flanked on all sides by your ideal women. I doubted Iori would want a world like that. If he did, then we wouldn't have been working together with him to begin with. Iori didn't say a word. He answered by readying his sword. A pity. Raziel waved her hand and launched the cross-like objects toward Iori. He tried to deflect them with his shield, but they vanished before they could connect. Whoa, that was close. Looks like I made it in time for the big moment. Just then, Anemone showed up, out of breath. Stone bullet. Alongside Vice President Fran. She fired sharp pointed rocks at Raziel with the force of a rifle. However, none of them hit her. That's a rather strange phenomenon. There must have been some sort of invisible wall around Raziel. The pointed rocks stopped right in front of the angel. She flicked her wrist, and the rocks crumbled away, falling to the floor and dispersing into smoke. Even faced with this abnormal phenomenon, Anemone simply smiled. Then she addressed the angel in a cheerful voice. It's been quite a long time, hasn't it, Ms. Sakura? Thank you for finding that book for me before. It was a huge help. In fact, I'm actually looking for a different one right now. Maybe you could help me locate it. Anemone's pleasant demeanor vanished. It's called the Book of Raziel. Ever heard of it? Her final words were filled with anger. I don't need to answer that. So that's still sealed away then. It would appear you're not in the best of shape, either, Ms. Sakura. I won't deny that. But even at my current level of strength, you all are powerless to stop me. Yet if still you wish to try, then come farther into the dungeon. I'll be waiting in its depths. She formed a light in her hand, then sent it flying. It swept in front of Iori and then began to fade. He placed his hand inside and grabbed something. It looked to be some type of key. Though, of course, I don't expect you'll even make it that far. Watching Iori grab the key, Raziel turned around, and the bookshelf facing her slid open. Then she stepped onto the magic circle that appeared on the floor. Wait just what's going on? The ground's moving, I can't stand up. Not only the bookshelf in front of her, but all the bookshelves in the library began moving. Magic circles materialized all over. In the space behind each one appeared a number of stone statues resembling demons. I've waited long enough, right, Takioto? I didn't fail to catch the angel's faint whisper. Raziel stepped into the magic circle. I instantly tried to follow her, but soon I realized that was the least of my worries. What the? With a steady rumble, one of the bookshelves moved aside to reveal a magic circle. In front of it was a statue shaped like a demon. Once the bookshelf stopped moving, the magic circle radiated light, and a glimmer came to the statue's eyes. Gargoyles maybe? Though, it seems like there's more to them than that, Anemone murmured before the statue slowly began to move. Get ready, everyone. Stone bullet. Each of us readied our weapons and faced off against the monsters. Bookshelves started moving all around the library, and a swarm of tomes flew from their shelves. Then monsters resembling dolls with angel halos appeared. They were all equipped with various weapons, and they moved in to attack us. I let slip an annoyed click of my tongue. After evading the attacks from the one in front of me, I thrust my dagger at its heart. I delivered a critical hit. Then I instantly opened the space between us, regained my stance, and looked around. Just how many of them are there? They weren't very strong at all. Still, their numbers posed a problem. There were so many monsters that it was getting annoying. I didn't see myself losing at all one-on-one. But I couldn't say the same against so many at once, and there were still the gargoyles mixed in among their ranks that I'd really need to focus on to have any hopes of defeating them. I evaded one of the gargoyles' attacks and fell back. As I reapplied my enhancement magic, a spell flew right past me. A sharp, pointed stone stabbed into the gargoyle. As the monster shook off the attack, a guy holding a sword came up and asked me a question. Are you all right? A memory from back then flashed through my mind. I recognized this person. As for whether I liked him, I didn't just dislike him, I hated his freaking guts. He annoyed me as much as the freckles that would pop up on my cheeks. Still, he was also a guy I had sworn to put in his place one day. I didn't ask for any help. At my comment, he flashed a slightly strained smile. His little sister had gone to help Iori and the others. I could hear her voice, energetic and loud, from all the way over here. I turned my eyes away from the younger sister to look at the elder brother. He seemed to be a little bit at a loss. Well, I did have to admit that, in this one specific instance, he had actually protected me. I guess I should still thank you though, so thanks. You're very welcome, mademoiselle. I do apologize, but I have my own complaints to lodge with these monsters, you see. May I have your permission to join in on the fight? He asked with a wink. That cool act of his really worked, but it irritated me to no end. You already planned to fight either way, right? What do I care? After all, ceremonial committee minister Benito Evangelista, was already standing in front of me to protect me. No matter what I told him, it was clear he planned on fighting. The fact that I found it reassuring made me really annoyed with myself. You guys are trying to escape the library and wreak havoc, aren't you? Benito parried the attack a gargoyle sent at him. He made it look all too simple, too. Frustratingly so, given I couldn't hope to fight with nearly as much ease. Sorry to say, but I'm not letting any of you go any farther. Then he put his entire body into shoving the gargoyle back. Once he got the monster off balance, he swung his sword. You're not hurting the other students. The gargoyle began to dissolve into magic particles.